How I Got into the Ministry of Healing by Woodworth Etter. I received my anointing 45 years ago when God raised me up from the sickbed. God showed me I must preach healing, and I told the people how God raised me up. After a while, I was holding a meeting in Indiana and worked nearly to death, sometimes nearly all night. The Spirit of the Lord came upon me. God was trying to show me He wanted me to preach healing for the sick, but I was afraid it was the enemy. It seemed like presumption. Many souls would be saved through divine healing, and the devil knew it. Finally, I settled the question. I knew it was the Lord, and I said, "Whenever you want me to pray for someone, bring them to me or take me to them, and I will do it." The first place I went, we had a wonderful meeting. There was a man living there who had been a great skeptic. I met a man who asked me to go and visit this man's daughter who was dying. 5 doctors had given her up. She'd been converted a few weeks before in our meeting. I didn't see how I could go, but I felt the hand of the Lord was in it, and I said, "If I can't go, I will pray for her, and I believe that God will heal her." The next morning I was very weak, but felt I must go to her, when the Lord said to me, "You pray for her, and I will heal her." A few days later in another town, word was brought to me that he had fulfilled his promise. Some talk about hypnotic power or my power. I never saw this woman. As for laying on hands, I was holding a meeting in Indiana, and there were only a few people to pray the power down. Dr. Daggett, a physician, came to the meetings whenever he could and would lead in prayer. Sometimes he had to go out because he suffered so much pain in his knees. The Lord began to say to me, "That man ought to be healed." He impressed this on me so much, I had to go to him and say, "I wish you didn't have to go out. I need you here." He said, "I'm very sorry, but I suffer so much I have to go." I asked him if he didn't believe God could heal him, and told him that I believed God wanted to heal him, and God was working with him in the same way. I called the congregation together and said, "Are there any Christians here who believe God can heal? If you really believe, come and help me. I'm going to pray for healing." Several came. I didn't know what to do any more than a baby. I began to pray. The power of the Lord raised my right arm up until it was over the knee and then stopped because I didn't like to touch it. The power of God was in my hand, and He wanted me to lay my hand on that man's knee. When I understood what God wanted, I laid my hand on the knee and asked God to take the disease out. He sprang to his feet, healed. He'd been that way 12 years. Everyone knew him, and everyone was amazed. Once when there were thousands of people present, I called out, "Is Dr. Daggett in the congregation?" He made his way through the crowd, running to the platform. He told how wonderfully he was healed, and I heard about him 12 years later. That was the first one I ever laid hands on. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover. That was the way God brought me into it.